Now that you've met Kaulile, we are standing by with the rest of the Open Access team to answer your questions about Open Access. Just pop them into the Q&A, and while we answer your questions there, here are a few of the frequently asked questions at our institution. How does Open Access publishing work? Open Access is a broad international movement that seeks to grant free and open online access to academic information, such as publications and data. A publication is defined open access when there are no financial, legal, or technical barriers to accessing it. That is to say, when anyone can read, download, copy, distribute, print, search for, and search within the information, or use it in education or in any other way within the legal agreements. Open access is also a publishing model for scholarly communication that makes research information available to readers at no cost, as opposed to the traditional subscription model in which readers have access to scholarly information by paying a subscription, usually via their library. The principles of open access are set out in the Berlin Declaration on Open Access to Knowledge in the Sciences and Humanities. This declaration has been signed by many international organizations for academic research, including the University of the Free State. There are different ways of publishing open access. There is the golden route. Here you get full open access journals, where the publication is published via publisher platforms in full open access journals. This route may involve a charge. The publication costs, known as article processing charges or APCs, are usually covered by authors or by their institutions. Most research funders, though, support open access and are willing to cover the costs themselves. A list of fully open access journals that are accessible worldwide can be found on the Directory of Open Access Journals website, the DOAJ. Then you also get hybrid journals in the golden route. These journals are subscription journals that allow open access publication of individual articles on payment of an article processing charge or APC. Next up is the green route, where the full text of academic publications is deposited in a trusted repository, that is a publicly accessible database managed by a research organization like the University of the Free State. This is also known as self-archiving. And then another route is the diamond route. This is publication via diamond journals or platforms that do not charge any author-facing publication fees or APCs. Diamond open access journals are usually funded via library subsidy models, institutions or societies. Quite a few of our own open access Kovsie journals follow the diamond route. What is the difference between open access and open source? Open source software, like free software, is a kind of software whose source code is available for inspection or modification. Open source software is usually available at no cost. Open access is a kind of access or availability. This kind of access could apply to any digital content, such as software, music, movies, or news. But calls are mostly for open access to a certain kind of scientific and scholarly literature, especially publicly funded research output. How does open access benefit researchers? Open access to research increases its visibility, reaching a wider audience and therefore increasing its potential for greater citation, enhancing a researcher's reputation, attracting potential collaborators, funders, and students, of course, compliance with funder requirements, and sharing knowledge from publicly funded research. Studies comparing citation counts report a significant advantage for open access, and we'll share some of those studies on our Facebook page today. How do universities and research institutions benefit from open access? Research institutions benefit from open access in the following ways. increased visibility and presence on the web, increased impact for research. The open access collection in the repository forms a complete record of the research output of the institution in easily accessible form. It provides the means for the institution to manage its research programs more effectively and to measure and assess its research programs. Open repositories publicize an institute's research strengths, providing maximum return on research investment. Institutions can mandate open repositories, speeding development. Open repositories increase impact and usage of an institute's research, providing new contacts and research partnerships for authors. Free and open source software is usually used to set up the repositories, and institutions benefit from free technical support for installation and use. There are low installation and maintenance costs usually, and repositories are quick to set up and gain benefits. And repositories provide usage statistics showing global interest and value of institutional research. Does the University of the Free State have an open access policy, and what do I have to do under this policy? Yes, the goal of this policy is to further access to research and scholarship at the University of the Free State and around the world. Adopting an open access policy puts us in good company with colleagues at many of the most forward-thinking and prestigious research institutions in the world. And increasingly, both public and private research funding organizations are also adopting open access policies. Our policy creates a limited right for the university to share scholarly articles with the world in order to foster access to the wealth of knowledge produced at the University of the Free State. This policy does not require any particular action on the part of authors, does not require the deposit of articles with the university or with any other archive, nor does it prevent authors from publishing in any outlet of their choosing. For authors who do wish to share their articles, these articles will be made available to the world via our open access repository, Kovsie Scholar. Maintained by the University Library, materials in Kovsie Scholar will benefit from greater exposure to search engines, including Google Scholar, greater accessibility to scholars around the world, and often increased citation counts, and will be preserved and migrated to new distribution formats as those formats inevitably progress. Articles that authors choose to share will never be sold for profit, nor transferred to anyone else for for-profit purposes. The license granted to the university under this policy is flexible, but limited to the goals of open access, dissemination, and preservation. Does the University of the Free State have an institutional repository, and where can I deposit my papers? Yes, Kovsie Scholar is our institutional repository, and you can contact Ms. Kaulile Khadebe for assistance with depositing your thesis and dissertations, your papers, books or chapters in books, and conference proceedings. If I choose Green Open Access, which version of my paper should I deposit in Kovsie Scholar? It is important to deposit the version that complies with publisher copyright policies, as well as any funders' requirements. This is usually the accepted author final version following peer review, but before the publisher's copy editing and formatting, creating the final PDF. The Sherpa Romeo database is a useful resource for checking details of standard publisher policies. There's also a versions toolkit that provides useful explanations of the various versions of journal articles produced during the research process. Some commonly used terms are submitted, also known as the preprint. This is the version submitted to a journal for peer review. Accepted, also known as postprint. This is the author-created version that incorporates referees' comments and has been accepted for publication. And the published version, usually the publisher's PDF. This version has been typeset and formatted for publication. If I self-archive, don't I risk breaching my publisher's copyright conditions? No. Submitting your accepted manuscript or final PDF to Kovsie Scholar does not make it openly available automatically. The open access team will check the file and apply the relevant open access embargo period. Publishers normally impose an embargo or a delay on making papers open access. This is set out in the terms and conditions or the copyright transfer agreement you agree to when you publish, except where a fee is paid for gold open access. The citation and abstract will appear in Kovsie Scholar after the open access team has processed the file, but the file itself will only be made open access after the embargo period. What are my rights as an author? So traditionally, publishers have owned copyrights. Although the copyright defaults to the author, copyright can be transferred, and most publishing contracts include a section transferring some or all rights to the publisher. In other words, the publishers own the copyrights because the authors have given them away. This is often titled the copyright transfer agreement. However, contracts can be negotiated. The consequences of transferring copyrights to the publisher is often not recognized. If an author doesn't own the rights to their own work, they may not be able to place the work on websites, for example, copy it for students or colleagues, or deposit the work in a public archive, or even reuse portions in subsequent work. Through negotiation with the publisher and the author's employer, an author may be able to retain some or all copyrights. In this case, they may choose to retain those rights or to waive certain rights in order to provide open access to the work. Creative Commons licenses can help the author share their work in an appropriate way. What is an article processing charge? An article processing charge, or an APC, is a fee paid to the publisher to cover research paper publishing costs. With production costs then covered, the article can be made free at point of access. So the cost of publication is moved from the reader via subscriptions and paywalls to the author via the APC. Where do I get funds to pay for publishing in open access? The University of the Free State, there is currently no dedicated fund for open access publishing. Authors may use their research funds or apply for funding via their usual channels for all types of publications. If you're unsure about what to do, it's always a good idea to contact Directorate Research Development, or DRD. And remember to include funds for publishing in open access in your funding proposals. Doesn't open access make plagiarism easier? In the early days, some authors worried that open access would increase the incentive to plagiarize their work. But this worry made no sense and has not been borne out. On the contrary, open access might make plagiarism easier to commit for people trolling for text to cut and paste, but for the same reason, open access makes plagiarism more hazardous to commit. Insofar as open access makes plagiarism easier, it's only for plagiarism from open access sources. But plagiarism from open access sources is the easiest kind to detect. Is open access compatible with copyright? Completely. The short answer is that copyright law gives the copyright holder the right to make access open or restricted, and we want to see copyright in the hands of authors and institutions that will consent to make open access open. The long answer depends on whether we are talking about open access journals or open access repositories. So open access journals will either let authors retain copyright or ask authors to transfer copyright to the publisher. In either case, the copyright holder will consent to open access for the published work. When the publisher holds the copyright, they could consent to open access directly. When authors hold the copyright, they can ensure open access by signing a license to the publisher authorizing open access. Publishers of open access journals usually have such licenses already prepared for authors. In open access repositories, authors of preprints hold the copyright to them and may post them to open access repositories with no copyright problems whatever. If the preprint is later accepted for publication in a journal that requires authors to transfer copyright to the publisher, then the journal may or may not give permission for the refereed postprint to be posted to an open access archive. So Sherpa Romeo provides information about publisher copyright policies and self-archiving, so you can use this site to find a summary of permissions that are normally given as part of each publisher's copyright transfer agreement. If permission is granted, then again there is no copyright problem. If permission is denied, then the preprint may remain in the open access archive because it is a different work from the postprint, and the author never transferred the copyright on the preprint. Moreover, the author may post to the archive a list of corrections or differences between the preprint and postprint. This is not quite as convenient for readers as seeing the whole postprint online, but it provides them with the equivalent of the full text of the postprint, and is infinitely more useful than no free access at all. What about third-party copyright? If the copyright on any of the material you deposit, for example illustrations, is owned by others, then you are responsible for ensuring you have the permission of the copyright holder, or that the inclusion of this third-party copyright material can be considered fair use. Which license do I choose? We recommend that you view our guide on Creative Commons licenses on our LibGuides. What are the barriers to open access to authors who want to adopt it? So author-initiated open access, even if it's self-archiving on an author's own website, is inconsistent with the once prevalent practice of assigning copyrights to publishers or granting publishers exclusive copyright licenses. Under the terms of such agreements, publishers can and sometimes do object when authors distribute their own works on open access terms. Authors committed to open access need to retain the rights to distribute their own work and authorize others to reuse it. This is more challenging for some authors than others. Scholars who write about contemporary art, for example, must often clear rights to reproduce images in articles commenting on these copyrighted creations, although some use is permitted under fair use. It may be more difficult to negotiate permission to include images in open access works than in, say, a limited print run of paper journals. For other authors, the prestige of publishing an article in a leading peer-reviewed journal whose publisher insists on assignments of copyright may be a strong incentive to choose not to make works available on an open access basis. This is especially of concern to junior faculty whose promotion applications may depend on a publication record in top peer-reviewed proprietary journals, and to scholars in fields without established open access outlets. These obstacles should fall, however, as open access journals establish their own reputations and proliferate across disciplines, as existing journals adopt more open practices, and as senior scholars signal the value of maximizing scholarly dissemination. And options are also increasing for authors who want to apply open access principles to books as well as articles. How can I find a relevant journal if I want to publish my paper in an open access journal? So we recommend that you look at the Directory for Open Access Journals, or the DOAJ, accredited lists, and ask your librarian. What must I watch out for when looking for an open access journal? Check if the organization that has granted money for the research demands that the results are made available in open access. Avoid open access journals which only seek to exploit the open access potential. Always choose publishers and journals on the basis of who the editor is, who has published in the journal earlier, and whether the journal is acknowledged and cited among peers. If possible, avoid hybrid open access, where you make a double payment, what they call double dipping, and that is paying for open access in traditional journals with APCs. A payment like this will often be more expensive than actual open access journals. So how can I promote open access? You can promote open access by submitting your research articles to open access journals when there are appropriate open access journals in your field. You can also deposit your preprints in an open access repository. Could be a disciplinary repository or an institutional repository. You can also deposit your postprints in an open access repository. The postprint, of course, is the version accepted by the peer review process of a journal, often after some revision. If you transferred copyright to your publisher, then post-print archiving requires the journal's permission. However, many journals have already consented in advance to post-print archiving by authors, and some will consent when asked. Okay, some will not consent, but for publisher policies about copyright and author archiving, you can see the Sherpa Romeo database. If you have not yet transferred copyright to a publisher, then ask to retain copyright. If the journal does not let you retain copyright, then ask at least for the right of post-print archiving. If it does not let you retain the right to archive your post-print, then ask for permission to put the post-print on your personal website. The chief benefit of post-print archiving is reaching a much larger audience than you could reach with any priced publication, in print or online. Reaching a larger audience increases your impact, including your citation count. You can also promote open access by depositing your data files in an open access repository, along with the articles built on them. Whenever possible, link to the data files from the articles and vice versa, so that readers of one know where to find the other. When asked to referee a paper or serve on the editorial board for an open access journal, accept the invitation. And if you're an editor of a toll access journal, then start an in-house discussion about converting to open access or experimenting with open access, letting authors retain copyright, or just quitting and launching an open access journal to serve the same research niche. To further promote open access, you can volunteer to serve on your university's committee to evaluate faculty for promotion. Make sure the committee is using criteria that, at the very least, do not penalize faculty for publishing in peer-reviewed open access journals. At best, adjust the criteria to give faculty an incentive to provide open access to their peer-reviewed research articles and preprints, either through open access journals or open access archives. And then work with your professional societies to make sure they understand open access. Persuade the organization to make its own journals open access, endorse open access for other journals in the field, and support open access self-archiving by all scholars in your field. You can also write opinion pieces, journal editorials, letters to the editor, discussion forum postings, to advance the cause of open access. And most importantly, educate the next generation of scientists and scholars about open access.